I wasn't supposed to hear the first one. That's what still bothers me the most. It was around 2:13 in the morning when I woke up to a voice quietly speaking from my phone on the nightstand. I remember the exact time because I checked it the moment I opened my eyes. The screen was black, no notifications, no apps open, but I could hear something faint through the speaker, like someone telling a story very slowly. At first, I thought it was a dream, carrying over into waking up, but when I leaned closer, I realized it sounded like a recording. A man's voice, calm and tired, describing something that happened to him while he was driving alone on a rural road. I assumed a video must have started playing somehow, maybe a horror story channel I had been watching earlier, but when I unlocked the phone, nothing was running. The voice stopped immediately, like it knew I was checking. I brushed it off as some glitch and went back to sleep. But the next night, it happened again. Same time, 2:13, same quiet voice, starting mid-sentence, like the story had been playing long before I woke up. This time, I didn't touch the phone. I just listened. The man was talking about a gas station he stopped at that didn't exist on any map. He described the lights flickering and a rule the cashier told him. If someone knocks on your car window after you leave, don't look at them. The strange thing was, the recording didn't sound like a polished video or podcast. It sounded like someone recording themselves late at night, almost whispering into a microphone. I checked my apps in the morning and found nothing in my history. No audio files, no videos playing overnight, nothing that explained how it started. The third night, the voice came back again, still at exactly 2:13. But this time, the story was different. A woman describing an apartment building where the elevator sometimes opened on a floor that wasn't listed. She said the lights on that floor were always dim, and the hallway smelled like wet concrete. And the rule was that if you ever stepped out there by accident, you had to walk straight ahead without turning around, no matter what you heard behind you. I remember sitting up in bed, listening carefully, because something about the way she spoke felt real in a way internet horror usually doesn't. There were pauses where she seemed to be remembering details she didn't want to say out loud. The recording ended the same way as the first one. The moment I picked up my phone, the sound cut off. I checked everything again. No apps open, no audio files saved, nothing in the system logs showing anything played at that time. I almost convinced myself it was some sleep hallucination until the fourth night when it happened while I was still awake. I had purposely stayed up past 2 just to see if it would happen again. At exactly 2:13, the phone speaker turned on and the voice started talking. This time, it was a younger guy describing a hiking trail that locals warned him about. Apparently, there was a section of forest where the path looped in a way that made people lose track of direction. The rule hikers shared was simple. If you hear footsteps behind you matching your pace, stop walking immediately. He said he ignored the rule because it sounded stupid, and that was when the footsteps kept going, even after he stopped. I remember the room feeling colder as I listened. The recording had little background, sounds like wind or distant traffic, things that made it feel like it wasn't staged. When it ended, I grabbed the phone instantly and checked the audio output settings. Nothing had been activated, no Bluetooth devices connected. It was like the sound had come from nowhere. I started putting the phone face down across the room before sleeping after that, but it didn't matter. The voice still came through the speaker every night at 2:13. Each story was different, but they all had the same pattern. someone sharing a personal experience and mentioning a strange rule that kept them safe. One night, it was about a security guard working the night shift in an office building who learned never to answer the phone after 3 a.m. because the caller would always ask what floor he was on. Another night, it was about a college student who rented a cheap room where the mirror sometimes reflected the hallway even when the door was closed, and the rule was to cover the mirror before sleeping if the hallway light was on. I started recording the audio with another device because I wanted proof I wasn't imagining it. The first time I did that, the voice didn't appear at all. The phone stayed silent that entire night. I tried again the next night, setting up a small recorder beside my bed before 2 a.m. Same result. Silence. It felt almost deliberate, like whatever was playing those recordings somehow knew when I was trying to capture them. So I stopped trying to record and just listened. After a while, I noticed something unsettling about the stories themselves. Small details started repeating. Different storytellers mentioning the same locations, the same times of night, the same rules appearing in slightly different forms. The gas station story mentioned avoiding eye contact with someone knocking on a car window. Weeks later, another voice told a story about driving through fog and said the exact same rule, almost word for word. I started writing them down in a notebook beside my bed because it felt like there was a pattern hidden in them. Around the 12th or 13th story, I noticed something else. Some of the events were happening in places near my city. One voice talked about a parking structure 2 towns over, where the lights on the top floor sometimes turned off all at once. Another described a convenience store on a highway I had driven many times. I tried looking up those places online to see if anyone else had posted similar experiences, but I couldn't find anything. It was like the stories only existed in those recordings. The night that really changed things was the one where the storyteller sounded familiar. The voice was calm, almost exactly the way I speak when I'm tired. At first, I assumed it was just someone with a similar tone, but as the story went on, I felt this weird tightening in my chest because the details were too specific. The voice was describing a person who woke up every night at 2:13 to hear strange recordings from their phone. He explained how the stories always contained rules that sounded ridiculous until you started seeing the patterns. I sat frozen on the edge of the bed, listening to what sounded like my own voice, calmly explaining my situation. Then the voice said something that made my stomach drop. It said the most important rule was to never look directly at the phone while the recording was playing. Up until that moment, I had always stared at it while listening. That night, I slowly turned my head away from the nightstand and listened without looking. The recording continued longer than usual, almost like it was waiting to see if I would follow the rule. The voice explained that sometimes the stories weren't just stories. Sometimes they were warnings passed from one listener to another, and sometimes the reason you hear them is because something nearby has already started paying attention to you. I don't remember how the recording ended because I barely slept after that. For the next few nights, I kept my phone face down and avoided looking at it while the stories played. They continued as usual, new voices, new experiences, new rules. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the recordings had shifted somehow. The stories were starting to feel closer to home. One described someone hearing footsteps outside their bedroom door at exactly the same time every night. Another talked about a reflection appearing in a black phone screen even when the lights were off. A few nights ago, the voice that sounded like mine came back again. It sounded calmer than before, almost relieved. It said the rule had changed slightly. Now the important thing wasn't just avoiding looking at the phone while the recording played. The rule was that if the phone ever started telling a story about you while you were still awake, you had to pretend you weren't listening. I'm telling this now because tonight the phone started speaking again while I was writing this, and the voice sounded exactly like mine, describing someone sitting in a dark room, typing out an experience they don't fully understand. The recording mentioned that the person writing had already broken one rule by repeating the stories out loud. It said that once someone shares the stories, the pattern moves with them. The voice stopped a few minutes ago. It's quiet now, but the screen of my phone is still black on the desk beside me. And the strange thing is, I haven't checked the time yet, because part of me is worried that if I look, it will still say 2:13.